So Elaine means ray of light. You keep mentioning that the light came through when you wrote this book. And
did I write that in my book? I'm like, how'd you know that?
I looked it up.
You did look it up?
I love that. I'm a dork and I love the etymology of words.
So do I.
You do?
I do. I can't believe you looked that up. I'm like, the only reason I know that is because my mom used to give us an Easter egg basket with like our name cards in there, and it said that, but I thought it was like just a thing my mom made up, or I don't know.
No, because you say that I learned to love who I am even if parts were forged by fire, and she called it the Welteroth fire.
Yeah,
which like the light and the fire
yeah.
kind of, but you have that in you. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I see it in you too. I see it in you too.
Thank you.
You know it when you see it. Like,
yeah.
And I do think like light attracts light for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. So your book, I love dedications. Do you like book dedications?
I do love dedications. I haven't looked at my book in so long. This is going to be really fun.
Here, you can hold it for a second.
Oh my gosh.
So you write, for every girl who aspires to be great and every woman who helped me realize we already possess the greatness we seek. What does greatness mean to you?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think there's a big part of being human that makes you want to fulfill your purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think that we all were born with a purpose, multiple purposes. And that's the part I wish we talked about more. You know, we always talk about purpose as though it's singular, like you're put here to do one thing, when really we're multifaceted and we're meant to do many things. And I think the more that I've surrendered to that, the more purpose I have felt in the many things that I do and have done, including motherhood, by the way. So I think that, I guess greatness comes back to sort of innate, like an innate sense of purpose and this desire to fulfill that purpose. And so I think you know when you're on the path to greatness, when you feel like you're heading toward the sense of fulfillment of potential. I think we all feel potential, like we feel the spark and we feel like this excitement or enthusiasm or this rush when we're engaging in something specific to our purpose. And I think we feel that, and I think we can hone that. We can choose to spend more time with it. You know, it's a privilege for a lot of people to be able to develop that.
It takes time.
It takes time. It takes investment. It takes support. It takes community. It takes so much to be able to like live within your greatness and expand that. But I think it comes down to potential and purpose, and then ambition. And the ambition part, I can't really say if that is something that you're born with or if it's nurtured. Like, I don't know if that's nature or nurture. I think that it's something you're born with, and then I think it can also be something that is modeled for you, that can inspire you, but you have to have it. You know what I mean?
The Welteroth fire.
You got to have it. I think you have to. There's some element of it that I think you have to be born with.
Well, you talk about growing up in this small town in Newark, California, and you're just dreaming of this big life. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds so cliche for me to never have heard of before, but I felt so in tune with that. I just was like, I grew up in Chicago, and I just wanted a big life. I've been after it ever since. Does it feel the way you wanted it to?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. I feel like, I don't know that it was exactly what I pictured then. Yeah. You know, because then I was informed by like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and like MTV Cribs and like Mariah in the bathtub, like, you know, sipping her champagne and being so extra. Like, I think like my childhood imagination was running wild with what that looked like. But I think in terms of like that feeling and just not feeling stuck and not feeling like boxed in, or like I'm surrounded by small-minded people and in a small town. I mean, like, I think that for me felt restrictive, or the idea that everybody around me is living the same life. Do you feel like you're living the big life that you were imagining?
I think I'm still in the mountain climbing phase.
Yeah.
In some ways, like I think it probably looks that way on Instagram that I'm living it.
Yeah.
But I like poured so much into the podcast. I made a card deck. I think I'm building.
I really love that you use the mountain climbing metaphor, because I do think like at each summit you reach eventually, you kind of like camp out and you can see the next horizon, but it's a great view from there. You know that you have more to work towards, but you can see how far you came, and you have a minute to kind of like assess what tools do I need to reach the next summit and which do I leave here. To me, that's the most important part, I think, that no one talks about when it comes to like this mountain climbing thing or this hustling towards your dreams thing. It's the tools that you use to get where you are not the same tools that you need to get where you're going. And so you have to like, you have to actually enjoy when you summit, if that's the right way to use the term. As a culture, we don't, in this like grind hustle culture, whatever, we're not encouraged to celebrate our little wins. So you just kind of always feel like you're mountain climbing, and you feel like you're never getting high enough or where you're wanting to go. But if you make a practice out of celebrating your small wins and like taking that moment to reflect and be like, damn, I just did that. Like, look how far I came.
Do you celebrate now?
I do.
That's awesome.
I do. I didn't before. And I do now. And I think it makes the journeying more joyful. You know, you probably summited so many times and you just kept going right on past it and not even recognizing it, you know?
Probably.
But I think like, man, when you really stop and be like, damn, look how far I came. And it also makes sure that you are not like burdened with these tools and weapons sometimes that are weighing you down, that you needed to get where you are, but you don't need them to go where you're headed next. And so having a baby forced me to take a beat and to offload and to reflect.
And you think you're better for it.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Really cool.
1,000%. And so I think I enjoy, like I can appreciate the bigness of my life and the wonder of it all. And I can recognize how God has been all up in it the whole time because of those moments of slowdown. And for me, I don't think everyone's pregnancy is as like hard as mine was, but mine, I think, I also think like everything happens for a reason. So for me, I think I was like forced to slow down.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me mentally because I am a mountain climber. I'm like, we got summits to hit, like we got to go, you know, but like it like forced me to slow down, and I've like built a life, not just
a career.
I've built a life, and that I'm like really, proud isn't even the word, it's like intrinsically satisfied with that part.
You seem really peaceful when you walked in.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I did just get back from Mexico, and I was swimming yesterday with my baby, but yeah, I think I do, but I think in this stage of my life, I think I do feel more peaceful.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So your book is called More Than Enough.
Yeah.
I think we all struggle with the feelings of enoughness, maybe daily, maybe weekly. When was the last time that you were battling it?
You know what I struggle more with is too muchness.
Oh no, I would have never guessed that. So who told you were too much?
I feel like, so when I say that right now, what I'm talking, I've heard that in my career. I mean, I read about it in my book. Like, I think Black women, women of color who are big and want a big life and take up space in the room, you're often told in overt and in subtle ways to shrink, to tone it down. And I've literally been told to my face in a promotion, like, it was like such a weird moment. It was there was such a juxtaposition because I'm like getting like a promotion and also being told to tone it down. And that was like such a weird paradox that I think represents what it is to be a woman of color, striving, advancing, taking up space, and in some ways making other people uncomfortable in the process unintentionally. And so I think that I have struggled with both feeling not enough
or like I'm doing this somehow wrong, and because there's some way that it's somehow rubbing somebody wrong. I'm just being true to myself though. And how do I, what's that you're asking me to compromise, like who I am?
There's also this double bind that pisses me off, because I think that what got you to that place was all of the courage and bigness.
Yeah.
And then you get to that place.
And they're like, yeah, just calm it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that thing you're talking about, I feel like I've experienced that and like metabolized that, internalized that for my whole career. So then you get the like we said, you're too much. It's like you struggle with, am I enough? You overcompensate, you find your way of, to succeed anyway. And then you're told you're too much, you're too loud, you're too ambitious, you're taking up too much space, like, and you just feel like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm just trying to live my dream. I'm just trying to get my little American dream on like everybody else. But I think now I'm like in a place where I think a lot about capacity. And I think I have a big capacity for a lot of things, and for love, for listening, for like I have a lot of empathy. I have a lot of big emotions. And so I think sometimes I feel like maybe my capacity is too much, such that I'm expecting everyone to match my capacity in ways that sometimes leave me feeling like I'm too much, like I care too much, like I love too much, like I expect too much. Like, I'm more so thinking about this in the context of, frankly, if I can be really candid, honest here, friendship.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like I've always been so lucky in friendship, in the sense that I've had a ton of really close friends at every stage of my life, and I collect my people. Like, I don't let them go. And I think it's a hard thing to move through life like holding on to all these bonds and wanting them to like remain the same when everything else is changing. And so I think that, yeah, if anything, I think I find myself in inflection points where like I'm mountain climbing, and I want to feel as connected to all my people at every summit. And I want to feel like we're like moving together. And sometimes, even though I know my friends are like a call away or a text away, and I know the love has never changed, but the dynamics change, and the time together is like few and far between, and the connections get looser. And I think most adults probably expect that change and expect like the loosening of the connections and expect, but like I think for me, my capacity is so big, and I want those connections to remain the same, and I want, like, I'm willing to pour in, and I want you to do the same. And I sometimes I end up feeling disappointed, and I'm reminded maybe it's me. Like, maybe I'm expecting too much out of like this world and other people, and and so I that's, if anything, like that's kind of where I'm at. It's a completely different place than I think where I was talking about it here, which was more about, I think like where I was when I was writing this book was more about like identity. And it's more about finding myself and my anchors.
Did you always value community the way you do now?
Yeah, I have always valued community a lot, I think, but I also couldn't prioritize it as much when I was mountain climbing. We're gonna keep coming back to this because I love it, but I feel like when I was like really hardcore doing the solo work of climbing my first and second like big mountains, like a lot of that work you have to do alone. And
I think even your parents don't get it.
I think you're absolutely right. As a parent now, though, I feel for my parents in a different way. When my child goes out into the world and starts mountain climbing and like forgets to call me, and like forgets to come home and doesn't value coming home as much as they used to, like I am gonna feel that on a different level. Like I get my mom and my dad now, like longing for me and like wishing that I prioritized like those relationships, those family core relationships a little bit more. But it's a necessary part of the journey, you know? And so anyway, I feel community has always been really important. I've always found ways to pour into my community and to nurture it. But I think I was an absent friend throughout a lot of my probably 20s and even early 30s. Like I was present when I was with you. And if you needed me, I'm the one you call at 3 a.m. Like I like to think of myself as like the deep end friend.
Oh, I like that.
Like I'm probably not going to be in the shallow waters with you. Like you got that. You don't need me to navigate those waters. When you hit like the deep end, like that's where I am. And I'll meet you in your deep end. I'll be there for you and I will hold you. I will guide you back to the shallow waters. I've always been that, but I think I haven't been as present for like the day-to-day things and like doing life with my friends, and I think there's something to be said for those connections. The downside of being the deep end friend is that you start to feel over time like this distance because you aren't there in the shallow end for the everyday stuff, the like, you know, those like phone calls when you're not talking about anything. So whatever road you choose, you know?
Because you can't choose both. It's very difficult. There was a woman I interviewed that said, we went to lunch after the interview and she said, you're gonna have to decide if you want purpose or happiness. And I was like, huh? Why can't purpose brings me happiness? And she was like, not as you get older. Like it'll come back around in your 50s and 60s. But like in the mountain climbing years.
Wow. In the mountain climbing years. I'm going to be thinking about that. Do you believe that now? Is that true for you?
I see what she's saying.
Yeah.
Because I feel similar to you. I'm the deep end friend. And I miss out on a lot of laughs and fun, but I am fueled by something that I can't put my finger on.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't ignore that. And you can't. Yeah. No, you shouldn't. No. I just think that like there are different reasons for each season. You know?
Yeah.
And so when you are in your grind phase, your mountain climbing phase, where you really have to be solo and you are like, you know, traversing a vertical cliff, like you have to rely on yourself to like make it. And no one else is going to get you where you're trying to go. No one else is going to save you. There is no net. It's like you versus you. And that journey, that solo journey is so worthwhile. And I think the best things that you will put out in this world will require that type of solo journeying. I also think there is a role for community, and the things that you make, in order for them to go the farthest, you need to make them in community. You need to share them like and nurture with a community that you're nurturing. So like it's all seasonal. I just think you have to be in tune enough to know what season you're in and to honor that. Do you know what I mean?
I entirely agree. There's a season for everything, for family, for friends, and kind of like take stock and hope that you're feeding what you need at that moment and giving other people what they need.
Yeah, yeah.
I think part of your story that people don't know if they haven't read your book is that you hustled. I think they see your life on Instagram and think she did it, and they don't know that you lived in this shitty apartment in Bushwick and that your mom dropped you off at, like you had an air mattress.
Oh yeah.
You were making like below minimum wage at some of these magazines you were working at. Does any of that stay with you?
Are you kidding? Absolutely. That is who I am. Like, actually, I don't even know. I'm like, wow, people think that? That's like a revelation to me. I'm like, people look at that and my Instagram and think that?
That's
wow.
so funny.
That's wild. Because anybody who knows me, and also like I said, I hold on to my friends. So a lot of my people knew me when.
Okay.
And they're like, yo, that girl was in the office until after midnight all the time. That girl, like, they remember when I would come to the office with literally stacks of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And then throughout the day, I would just like go through them. That was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I didn't have time to go get lunch, nor did I have the money to go pay for lunch. And when I did have like a little win to celebrate, my friend Natalie Manuel, when we were interning together that first summer, we would meet up and we would literally share a sandwich that cost probably like $5, and we would split it in half and like split the cost and eat that on the way back to our office. And that was like our we went out for lunch today.
Yeah.
Where we're celebrating something. Like, what I need people to understand, first of all, is that, and now I'm going to sound like an old auntie, but like, I started my career at the beginning of the recession, which is not very dissimilar to this moment. It's like people were losing their jobs every day. And I was so prepared every day I walked into work for it to be my last, that I didn't spend any of my money. I worked so hard to make sure that like, I like it wouldn't be on me. If I'm not losing my job, it's because of some outside force. But like, I said yes to everything. I put my nose down, and I just was all about adding value, period. And there was no job that was too small. And I worked like that even when I was the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. I was still like there until midnight, and I didn't have very good boundaries, and I did not have like a work-life balance. I didn't even know what that was, and it was worth it. And now we're in a place where we're trying to find peace, we're trying to find balance, we're trying to find harmony, while also finding purpose in our lives and doing work that matters in the world. And that is the focus of my next book. That is what I'm working on right now.
Are you writing it?
I am writing my next
Elaine,
book right now, yeah.
When people say like Beyonce has the same amount of hours as you do, that's how I feel about you.
No
I don't
way.
understand. How?
I will be honest with you.
That's amazing.
I am still working on finding my workflow in terms of making space for this book writing process. Like this book, I was like, I am shutting down my life. I am saying no to everything.
Wow.
And for the next 6 months, y'all aren't gonna see me, hear from me. Like, I was willing to shut everything off to get this done. It was urgent. Like, this book was coming out of my pores. It was like, and I'm so grateful. Like, oh God, if I never feel that way again, I'm so grateful that I felt that more than once in my life. The urgency of the call on your life, like, that urgency is a godsend. If you know what you were put here to do, and you know that you were put here to do it in this moment, like such a time as this, you have no other choice. You have to make room in your life to get it done and get it out of you. Yeah. That's the way this book came to me. Like, it hit me. It was so clear to me. I left my job, my former dream job, and part of what I knew I had to do was this. I talk a lot about like zone of genius. And
is that like flow state?
It's a little bit different in the sense that, like, I think once you're in your zone of genius, you experience a flow state. But I think identifying your zone of genius happens first. And to me, the way I think about zone of genius is that which only you can do.
Cool.
That which only you can do. No one else can write your book for you.
Yeah.
No one else can sit here and build this podcast empire that you're building. Like, no one else can write these questions. There's a certain magic that you bring in this capacity, and there are a million other things you could be doing that you'd be great at too, but other people could do those things. So I evaluated incoming opportunities through that lens. The energy that I'm in now is like, say yes to what feels good and what feels most valuable and the highest use of me in this moment. And I've had a lot of opportunities, thank God, that have come to me that I feel worthwhile. I love breaking down false binaries. Like, I think many women, ambitious women, are on this spectrum, right? And it's like, what's gonna win today? Even the name of your podcast, it's so relevant to like the mission of and the heart and soul of Teen Vogue. Like, when I was at Teen Vogue, we were all about like, you don't have to just be one thing. Yeah. And you can find the substance in the superficial. You can be both pretty and smart. You can be about fashion and politics. Like, you are multifaceted. We all are. And like, why don't we create more room for intersections? Why don't we create more opportunity to have nuanced conversations where all of it matters, all of it's relevant, all of it has a place? And I do think like, so I'm like, let's go there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I appreciate that. What I really was taken by with your book was that you made room for the mess. Oh. Like, when you said like you're in for all of it.
Yeah, there was a mess. There was a mess in there. Yeah, for sure.
But you don't talk about that elsewhere. You saved it for this, which I really loved. There were rough relationships,
Yeah.
boyfriends. There were tough moments at work. You let it all go in the book. So I want to bring it back to the fact that I think you're a light worker. Ava DuVernay wrote the foreword in your book, and she said, "Nothing bad ever happens to me. It's all to learn and grow." When you are so full of light, I'm sure you think of everything as positive. You can learn from this. There's a spin on it.
Optimism, yeah.
Right? The hard stuff. The messy stuff you wrote about in your book. How do you get through those moments?
Faith, and you find your anchors. Yeah, I think for me, I found, like, my mom has been an anchor for me throughout every hard, dark part of my story. Why am I getting emotional? I'm just like thinking about that. She has been an anchor in my life in every way. And my husband's my best friend. I know it sounds so cliche. It's like, but having someone who can see you through, like, can watch you and cheer you on like when you're in the light and like in the spotlight and being applauded, and somebody who can like walk with you through those like really dark valleys and like still see the light in you and like still amplify it and create space for it. Like, man, those are people you hold on to, and those are people that you nurture and invest in and like keep by your side. I feel like I've been super blessed in my life. I've been the beneficiary of like incredible love and grace and support, and that's the only way that I have like navigated some of the stuff that's really hurt me, and I've been able to alchemize it into light.
Why'd you get emotional talking
I don't
about
know.
your mom?
Because my mom is the best person ever. She's been through so much, and it doesn't make sense when you look at her and you see how much joy and light and love that is just flooding her, and like you just get caught in the overflow of it, and you're just like, it doesn't make sense that you have come through all of this and you still are like this radiant beam of light, and you have so much light to give. It's like, it's just, she's like a miracle. She's really a miracle. And she's just always been a positive force in my life, and I'm just so grateful for her. I don't know, I think I'm probably even more grateful for her now that I'm a mom, you know? I think our relationship has just like evolved even more, and I think my perspective has shifted such that I can really, like a mother's love.
Well, she has all these great phrases in the book.
Yeah, my book is really about my mom. Like, anything good about me, or like anything that maybe drew you to my work, man, the best of it comes from her. Like, she's the source. I didn't realize this, of course, like going into the book writing process, but like in the end, when I reflected on the book, I was like, man, one of like the greatest legacies this book will have is that I was able to multiply my mother's mothering for so many people who didn't have moms like that.
So like, you're at Ebony and you are really gutsy and you asked for this raise. Was that your mom's voice?
No, what's funny is my mom and I are different in some way. Like, I think like there's a lot that I get from my mom. Like, the best parts of me probably are my mom, but then there's an intensity to me, and like a fire, and like a courage, and maybe even like when I reflect on some of these earlier stories from my career, I'm like, who was that girl? Like, she was like so relentless and ambitious, and just like, by any means necessary, like, what I want is gonna happen, you know? And that I was born with. I didn't really get that I didn't inherit that from my mom. So there is a part of her that will kind of like speak truth to power, or like fight the man, you know?
She feels it.
Yeah, but she's also like a survivalist. And like, so when I had this bright idea when I was like 21 to, you know, in the middle of a recession when everyone's losing their jobs, and I am some intern, lowly intern at Ebony magazine, which is already going through a lot of financial, troubles, and, people are losing their jobs very much so, then I felt like, oh my God, it's almost like embarrassing looking back at that story that like
Really?
I had the audacity, to say,
I think it's awesome.
I'm gonna go and ask for this raise. Okay, so for context, for people who do not know what we're talking about, I started as an intern for $10 an hour, and it was a 3-month summer internship. At the end of the summer, no one told me to leave, so I didn't leave. I just kept coming back, and then I kept getting paychecks. So I was like, this is working, I just didn't say anything. I just kept showing up. I kept saying yes. I kept taking on more responsibility, and months went by. And meanwhile, the interns across the street at Time Inc. who were working for like the sexier magazines at the time, including the magazine that was originally my dream magazine internship job, they all were released at the end of the summer, and none of them got jobs. It was the recession, so they didn't have the headcount.
Yeah.
So I was like on a lifeboat, okay, across the street at this like family-run, Black-owned company that the rest of the industry kind of put their nose up at. I was so grateful to be there. And I was working really hard. I was in the trenches. We had no resources. We had no access. You had to fight for every single thing. And I thought, okay, well, now it's been months. I'm still here. I'm doing like 6 jobs by myself. Maybe I can make like a little bit more money. I'm making $10 an hour. Maybe I can make like $20 an hour. And I literally do not know what gave me the audacity to have that thought, let alone go verbalize that thought to my boss.
Well, and then not show up to work the next day to like really be like, I mean this.
Yeah, to really like put my foot down. Like
It's amazing.
I asked my boss, we had this conversation, and the funny thing is that when she raised the question about giving me a little raise with HR, they were like, how is this girl still even here? Like, this internship was over like months ago. Like, homegirl should have been back home. But at that point, I had been so focused on like adding value that I actually did add enough value that it was in her favor, my boss's favor, to figure out how to keep me, right?
Yes.
So she fought for me, and she pushed back, and she asked them for, to make an exception and try to find a few extra coins to scrape together to give to me. And I think she came back with 15, but I knew somehow, and I don't recommend this, by the way. This is not necessarily like a glory story. This is just a story of a thing that happened, and I got lucky. But you may not get lucky if you do the same thing. So I'm not necessarily pitching this as a great idea, but I did feel that I brought more value than $12 an hour, $10 or $12 an hour, and I needed to survive. And what I asked for was 20. And this was, by the way, like no health insurance. Like I would have to save for that. I'd have to pay for my own taxes. So I was accounting for all of that. And
it's what you needed to live.
That's what I needed to live. And they told me no. And I said, well, something to the effect of, I'll give you a day to think about it. I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'm just going to give you a day to think about this. And it's wild. It
worked.
I mean, I feel embarrassed even saying this, but
Really?
I did actually not come in the next day. I told my mom on the train. I remember I was waiting for my train, and I told my mom, and I think she probably thought I was crazy. But once I had made up my mind, she supported it. I think she valued that I included her enough to give me whatever response was going to help me make my own decision. And then I made my decision. She made me feel supported. And then I went back the next day, scared to death. Like scared to death. I remember I was actually shaking. My mouth was dry. I was like, for sure I'm fired. Like for sure. Like I'm insane. I shouldn't have done that. Like she's gonna hate me. What was I thinking? And I walk in her office, and I try to have like small talk, and she's like, sit down. We need to talk. And I was like, here it goes. Here it's happening. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my job before I even technically got it. Like I technically don't even have this job right now that I'm like fighting for a raise on. Whoo! And she just says, what you did yesterday was very smart.
With that face, because you got intense
Oh,
when
yeah.
you just said that to
Oh
me.
yeah, when she said what you did yesterday, I was like,
Yeah, it's over
it's
for
over.
me.
It's over. Like what I did yesterday, I thought she was gonna say was unacceptable. Like I thought I was gonna get reamed.
Yeah.
And because there was the pregnant pause. She
Yeah.
just like left me hanging for a moment. But she said what you did yesterday
It's very smart.
was very smart. And it gave me the leverage to go back to them to say, if we do not find this money, we will lose her. If we lose her, I do not have support in this New York office, and I cannot do my job without proper support. We have to find it, and we need to make this good. And so we have made an exception. You will get $20 an hour, and you will not get insurance, and you will not come in my office again and ask me for anything else for the foreseeable future, and you will not do this again.
Yeah.
Like she's like, let's be clear. Like this was smart,
It was a one-time
and it was a
thing.
one-time thing, and it won't happen again. So enjoy that little $20, you know, essentially.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, because you're gonna be riding that out for a while. And I did, and I'm so glad I fought for myself in that moment in a way that worked by the grace of God, because she was right. She lost her job not very long after that, like maybe within a year. And she was my like anchor in that job. She was my role model. She was my mentor. And she lost her job. And a whole new regime came in, and I was hanging on by a thread, and I had to prove myself all over again. And so I wasn't in a position to ask for more money. For like the rest of the time, I was basically there. And I think this actually speaks to the moment that we're in with all of these labor strikes happening right now, you know, with like the Writers Guild and SAG, which I'm a part of, by the way, striking. Like these moments are they're so fragile. And the way that you navigate them is just, it's really important, and you have to be very strategic, and it's very risky.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it doesn't always go your way. Sometimes it will, but I think it is worth speaking up, knowing your worth, fighting for your worth. But it doesn't always go your way.
Well, you end up having a lot of these moments as, would I say a PA, or like, what was your title?
Yeah, essentially. In between the time that technically the internship ended, but everyone forgot to tell me and they
Yeah.
forgot about it, and the time that I asked for the raise, like in between that time, I just changed my title on my email signature to production assistant.
So
From
good.
like intern to production assistant. And then people started referring to me as production assistant
It's great.
because I was doing that job.
Well, you
But
get on all these sets, and so you talk about one in the book with Serena Williams.
Yeah.
You talk about how you saw this magazine cover with Alicia Keys that like really
Yeah.
just struck something in you. Now that you're in rooms with people sometimes, have you been able to have these full circle moments and communicate it at all?
Oh, that's such a good question. You know what? I have been in the moments with people where I'm recognizing I'm having a full circle moment, but I have not yet been able to articulate to people what it means. I hope one day I get to. I have worked with Serena Williams in particular, who, like, I did have this completely like career shifting, career making moment when I was an intern in the same job. My
Yeah.
very, very first shoot, when I was assisting this boss, Harriet Cole, that I was just referring to. Yeah, it was a cover shoot with Serena Williams, and like I made this suggestion. Like, again, like, wow, who did I think I was? Oh my God, the audacity. But I whispered a suggestion, a styling suggestion to my boss, and
Well, they
she
ended up
embraced it.
using the cover that you suggested.
They did.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was like this really big, like triumphant
big.
moment as a young magazine editor. Are you
It is
kidding me?
big. It's huge.
So then years later, I'm on Project Runway, and who is the guest judge for the finale? Sitting right next to me, but Serena Williams.
That is so cool.
And I wanted so badly to tell her this whole entire story, but the moment didn't present itself. I don't think I told her the story, but
Yeah.
I had the satisfaction of knowing, like, yo, this is a full circle moment. And if only she knew the role that she played in helping me get where I am, and
Yeah.
like the validation of now sitting next to her on this panel and talking about fashion, to like welcome her to our set and to talk about style and fashion and something that I've honed since that moment of helping
Yeah.
to choose the swimsuit that ended up on the cover that she was on. Like, it was just such a beautiful moment.
You have really beautiful faith in the book. I think it stemmed from your mom because she like came from the church.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, you would say like when people would talk about your dream job, if they were like naysayers, you would say it's between me and God.
Yeah, I had to create a boundary
Yeah.
for sure. I think whenever you're like, you know, when the seed that you're planting, when it's just a seed and
Yeah.
it's fragile and like someone's fear can crush it, you have to insulate it and protect it from anybody's projections and like negative energy. I really believe that is super important. I don't talk about my most vulnerable like ideas or the things that I want the most. I protect them the most. I don't talk about them with just anybody. I only bring my little seedlings of ideas to like my trusted inner circle. I really believe that's important.
When do you get most of those seeds?
I get those ideas when I'm in conversation with people.
Yeah.
When I'm in like deep end conversation with people, not in the shallow end where we're just like, you know, small talk. Like, I actually hate small talk so much. I feel my life force like draining out of me, and I think I'm just like wasting my time and my energy. But when I'm really connecting with people and they say something that I can literally see as a pull quote, like I still have that magazine editor mind, like once an editor, always an editor. And so I'm always like, I think my mind is always like looking for the story, and I can see the pull quote or the headline, and I'm like, that is something I want to write about later. Oof, that's a chapter in the next book. Or like, that's something I just want to sit with and ponder, or like I want to interrogate that a little bit more. Like those conversations, and I'm the kind of loser or crazy person. I'm the kind of person that will find myself in conversation with random strangers. Like I find myself.
Of course you do.
And I get so much out of it. Like I know people are weirded out by the idea of talking to strangers, but I live for it. Like I live on a plane. I'm always going back and forth between New York and LA. Whoever I sit next to on the plane,
make plane
inevitably.
friends?
Oh my God, I have an entire category in my phone for plane friends, and then I have a note section in my phone for plane friends, and I write down the things that we talk about and the things that, like the revelations that I have. Or when you're just open to conversations with random strangers, you end up finding that we have so much more in common than we ever think. And I think a lot of times we build worlds that look like us in a lot of ways, like people who move through the world with a lot of the same ideas, who are around the same age, who are maybe around from the same culture. Socioeconomically, we're kind of like in the same world. But when you're out in the world and you just meet people happenstance, it like forges these intergenerational bonds. And it just reminds me of how healing it is when we connect with people who don't look like us, who don't think like us, and like how much that can expand our worldview and like make us better, you know? I think it would be healing for the world if we talk to strangers more.
There's this quote that you say in the book a few times, and it was actually from future husband, who didn't end up being future husband.
No, thank
Spoiler
God.
alert. Thank God. If you haven't read the book yet, read it and you'll understand why.
Those are the juiciest chapters, by the way.
They are.
That people like never ask me in interviews, but on the streets, that's all people want to talk about, by the way, is like future husband.
Every one of my friends that read your book only wants to talk about future
Really?
husband. Yes, for
oh
sure.
my God, that's amazing.
Because I think a lot of women have been through a version of future husband in some way before they meet somebody great.
Yep.
Not that he wasn't great in his own way. But anyways,
Yeah.
he says, what's for you can't be unfor you.
Yep.
If you feel comfortable sharing, I think it'd be really powerful for people to hear an example of something that missed you, that at the moment felt life-shattering, and now you're like, thank God for that redirection.
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so many examples of that, but that relationship is like number one. Number one. No, it really dodged a bullet with that one.
Yeah.
And wish him well. By the way, I just have to acknowledge, seriously, no one has ever asked me about this part of my book, ever.
Really?
Of all the interviews I've done over the years, and like
wow.
even the book tour, we never talked about this part. It's always so like career focused, or, you know, the mother angle. So it's like fun to like talk about this part,
Yeah.
because this is like the juicy part.
It really is.
Like, you know, like the TV show version of my book is like this. Like this is where the because there's even more that I didn't share in the book. But a time when like something missed me on purpose, but was crushing at the time, but gave me wings in the aftermath. I would say like that breakup. So in my mid-20s, my early 20s, I was dating this guy who was like perfect on paper. Like everything that Sex and the City told me to desire in a man. You know what I mean? Like it was like, this is like, if I'm Carrie Bradshaw, this is my big, and we're riding off into the sunset. Although we know how that story ultimately ends up. It wasn't actually riding off into the sunset for Carrie either, Carrie and Big. But yeah, I think that like, I just saw the future with this person immediately. And now in hindsight, I know like when you're fantasizing and like romanticizing a narrative around someone, you're actually not falling in love with them, you're falling in love with this fantasy. And so at the time it felt very real though. Like I really thought I loved this person, I thought that they loved me, and I thought that we were like a power couple, very successful, very handsome, very charming, very, very smart, and like made me feel, especially in front of other people, like I was adored and loved. And behind closed doors though, the energy was cold, and it was really confusing for me. In ways, it manipulated me and how I felt about myself and like how I showed up in the world. And I realized that I was shape-shifting to like appeal to this person's hot and cold ways, and like trying to get their approval and feel good enough. And I think a lot of the enoughness part of this book, I think I was deep in like navigating that around that time. I think we all are, especially in our early 20s. And a lot of times I think we give our power away to men, to jobs, to titles, to things outside of us, to like assign value to ourselves, you know, through other people, through external things. And so I think I gave up a lot of my power in this dynamic, and it had a shrinking effect on me, and my confidence was plummeting, and my self-esteem along with it, and my light. Like I appreciate when like you bring up like, you know, that you think of me as a light worker, and you bring up like my name means ray of light. I think that like my light is part of like, that's part of me. That's like my aura. That's like, and when I'm at my best, I think it's like big and bright. And when I'm not, it dims. And I think it was really scary how dim my light got within the context of this relationship. And I think it takes a while to discern like what is the root of this. Like, you know, I think you can quickly become so enmeshed with someone that you can't really identify your ish from theirs.
Yeah,
and
I think you get mad at yourself for letting it dim.
Absolutely. And you think it's your fault. I think I internalized a lot of what happened in that relationship as like my fault, and I worked really hard to try to make it work by any means necessary. And I think that energy that we put in, this goes back to our bigger philosophical conversation about like approaching your work and your life with this very masculine, make it work, strive by any means necessary, intensity and energy. Like that works in some parts of your life for some amount of time, but not for everything and not for always. And I approached my relationship with that same energy that I was approaching my career. I had this ambition that was so strong that was like, if I can see it, I can manifest it. it's gonna happen, you know, like one way or another, whether it's this raise, this job, or this relationship, you know. And I was humbled in recognizing that love don't work like that. And love doesn't feel like that. When you feel like you have to work so hard to keep someone's love and affection and respect and warmth, that love ain't for you, sis. And that's not actually love.
I was in a relationship that made me feel that way, and it was coming from a wound in me.
Yeah.
And when I was reading your book and you talked about your dad's addiction, I kept thinking that's the wound, right? It's like work to make everything great.
Yeah, 100%. I didn't recognize that though. Of course, you never recognize it when you're in it. For anybody who grew up in an environment where there was a measure of unpredictability that made you feel vulnerable and maybe even like unsafe on some level, whether it's psychologically, emotionally, physically, or otherwise, I think that you build up like survival mechanisms. And for me, my survival mechanism was perfectionism. And like, I'm gonna outwork, outshine, outperform this stuff that doesn't make me feel great. And this stuff that's out of my control. And this stuff that feels like my shadow. Like I think I was like outrunning my shadow. But the thing about your shadow is it's gonna follow you wherever you go. Right?
I have chills when you say that.
And so I think like what I recognized I was doing in this relationship and in relationships during that era was assigning value in other people and things outside of myself to compensate for what I felt I was lacking inside, or what I was lacking just in my makeup, like my family dynamic, or where I came from, or how I grew up, and like what I had or didn't have. And so I was looking outside of myself to compensate for that stuff. And so this guy represented for me like the perfect picture that I aspired to, and safety from what I have seen. I thought, this is security, this is stability, there's an upward trajectory that I'm gonna be a part of. This is gonna save me from my worst fears. And instead, it introduced like a whole world of pain and confusion and things I didn't even know to fear, like duplicity, dishonesty, disloyalty, lacking of love. Like growing up, the circumstances were not perfect, but I always felt loved and I always felt seen. And you know, our parents are not perfect, but my parents made me feel like unique and special, and they gave me space to explore who I am and what I have to say, and they gave me room. Like I was nurtured in the exact way I was meant to be nurtured. Like nothing was missing, and I recognize that now. But I think it takes time to get there. I think I was in a place of feeling the inadequacy of within me, and from my childhood perhaps, that I wasn't even thinking about, but it was just, again, it was like this shadow. It was like in the background. This relationship shattered me. It shattered me when I recognized that this is not who I thought he was. This person that I loved, that I thought I was gonna build my whole life with, was not who I thought he was. He was living a double life. He was like a compulsive liar, and I didn't see it. And I thought I had like such a great character.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, I was like, I thought my bullshit meter was pretty good, pretty strong.
You don't trust yourself for a while.
Oh man, you don't trust yourself. And that's the hardest part. But I remember in that, by the way, like the downfall of that relationship, I didn't tell anyone, by the way, when it was actually happening. I just like went inside of myself, and I didn't trust anybody with that story because it was too painful, too fresh, too much of an open wound, and I navigated a lot of that by myself, and because of that I ended up still in relationship with him. I kept going back to the source of my pain for my healing, which is, in hindsight, like if I could just tell that girl, like if I could give her any advice, I'd be like, do not go back to the source of your pain for your healing. And my mom eventually identified that like something was wrong, and I kept kind of keeping her at a distance and like keeping her at bay. She'd call me and I'd be like, I can't talk and blah, blah, blah. And then one day she was like, Elaine Marie, you will tell me today what is going on.
She knew.
What is going on? And like that like, and I just remember I just broke down and I told my mom everything. I told her all the things that I'd found out, all the things that I didn't know what to do about, and all the lies and like all the deception and how broken I was and how much I still loved him and wanted to protect him. Part of why I didn't tell anybody is I wanted to protect his image still. And I also wanted to protect the future that we may have, just in case I wanted to end up with him. Maybe we can work through this. And so I don't want everyone to know all the things that happened, because then they're going to judge me if I choose to stay in this relationship. So I got to keep it locked up. But I told my mom finally in that moment, I told her everything. And she just said, this is not love. When you are hurting, baby, you can call me any time of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. You can call your best friend. She named them. She said, but let me be clear. You will never call him again. Do you understand me? Never call him again. And I remember, this is like after months of like kind of being in this tumultuous, secretive, totally toxic dynamic with this person that I was still protecting, who had like destroyed me. And I still felt protective of him weirdly. And in that like cloudy, murky place, my mom instantly made everything so crystal clear. It's like she made the decision for me that I couldn't make for myself. Mm-hmm. And she like, it's like I was like in a dark room and she like threw open the door and like pointed me towards the light, and I was able to walk out of the room. Yeah. And I never called him again. And then I recognized like, I have to save myself. I've lost myself, and I have to find her and I have to protect her, and I cannot engage anymore. And I texted this person and I said, I can't talk to you, and I don't know when I can talk to you again. And he wrote back 2 words, I understand. And I tell you, no joke, this is like the person I thought I was gonna marry. This is the person that for like a year, I had a ring on my finger, and for years, like we were together for years, like 3 years, I think. We never spoke again. I never called him. I never texted him. He never called me. He never texted me. To this day, I've never gotten an email, a text. Wow. I've never gotten an apology. I've never gotten anything from him, but it was the greatest, most freeing moment, like letting that fantasy life partnership go and just like relying on me and remembering that like I'm the source of my happiness, and taking back my power from this person that I'd given it away to. Life-changing. Actually, what's interesting about the timing of that is that day when my mom said, don't ever call him again, and I never called him again, 2 weeks later, the Teen Vogue job came for me. And I still to this day believe that those things are energetically connected.
I do too.
And that if I did not offload that, I would not have created the space for something so big and life-changing to come into my life and to put me and take me on this journey I was meant to go on. And on this journey, I was the hero of my old story. I became the husband I was out here seeking. I became that. So I was no longer seeking anything or anyone outside of myself to do and be anything more than I could do and be for myself, like truly. And I know for a fact, if I'd chosen that road, I never would have, even if that opportunity came, I would not have chosen it. I would have chosen him. Yeah. And he moved to a different city. I would have moved to the city with him. I probably would have gotten married, had babies before my career ever took off. But I chose me, and I chose this path, and I chose a husband who is the antithesis of this man in every way. And our relationship is like beyond what I thought, like, be our happiest days, like that relationship, which I thought was like, it doesn't get better than this. Like, it doesn't get better than this.
Yeah.
Like, literally, he was like my Prince Charming. I thought, like, he was my Prince Charming, I made him my world. I thought that was happiness. That does not hold a candle to the fulfillment and the joy and the partnership and the unconditional love that I feel from my husband, who's my best friend and my anchor and my rock, like knows me better than anyone, holds me down better than anyone, like loves me like my mother loves me. Like, that's the type of love I'm out here for. And I am so glad, honestly, that I lived through that and that I have that testimony.
I don't know why I'm getting emotional now, but when you say he loves me like my mother loves me, I actually think people don't talk about that very often. It's so beautiful to be loved like that. It's so beautiful that you have that.
I don't think I've thought about it like that before. Thank you for calling that out, because I don't think I've ever even characterized it like that or framed it like that.
So first of all, you have an incredible Washington Post column that comes to my inbox, and you give people advice.
You subscribe?
Of course. I think you're a light worker, and I support, for years, I've supported everything you do because I think you're putting so much goodness into the world.
Thank you so much. That honestly means a lot, especially because it's a subscription. I'm like, wow, you like pay money on a monthly basis to read my work?
Well, you know, when someone has their shit together, you need to learn from them.
Oh man, I appreciate that.
So this is, I always have people write in and I save them. This was actually a voicemail originally, but they said, I have a group of girlfriends. We have all been friends for years and have a lot of history together. There's one girl in the group that's hard for me to be around now that we're out of college. I care about the group. I still want to go on girls' trips, and I don't want to disrupt the whole environment. But I don't feel like I can talk to her. She's not approachable. She's turned into a bit of a mean girl, and communicating with her rationally is just not an option. Any tips?
You know, there was a time where I really believed that, like, anything and everything can and should be confronted head on in order to be resolved, or even to like come to a close, like a peaceful close. I no longer think like that. What I would say is, if you don't think that having the conversation will change the outcome of how this person chooses to move through the world, I wouldn't waste your energy on having the conversation. I would create boundaries with this person, and if you need to, with the group, and operate accordingly. It might create a rift in the group if you bring up the elephant in the room, and you can choose to be that truth teller. You can choose to be the person that calls out the energy in the room and the elephant in the room, and it might it might disrupt the dynamic. It will disrupt the dynamic, and you can either choose to take that on, or you can choose different friends and different dynamics that feed you at this stage of your life. At this stage of my life, I would choose the latter. Like, save your energy, sis. That's what I would say.
Save it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 rapid fires.
Okay, let's go.
Smartest decision you've ever made?
I think it's the partner that I chose. I think marrying the man that I chose was probably the smartest thing that I've done.
That's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty smart question. Choose anyone that comes to you.
I feel like I'm like at a tarot card today. The single best party you've ever been to. Set the scene. Ooh, do I party enough for this?
Have you been to the Vanity Fair Oscar party?
I have. I have been to that party.
Tell me about it.
You know what? If it wasn't for the most magical interaction that I had there, I would say like that was nowhere near the best party I've ever been to, just because there is this air of pretense.
Yeah, you've been to a Brooklyn block party and those are better.
Exactly.
I got
you know what I'm saying? Like, the Vanity Fair party does not hold a candle to a Brooklyn block party in terms of actual fun and joy,
Yes.
quotients. But I would say I had the most like memorable conversation with Cicely Tyson, who just pinched me. I mean, I happened to walk in, I saw Ava DuVernay, who I love, and she pulled me into this little group, and who but Cicely Tyson was sitting right there, and she like embraced me and had me sit next to her, and she held my hands and she like looked into my soul, and she just spoke to my soul, honestly, for an hour at least. We were just locked in, and I really, really regret that I didn't write down every single thing that she told me. But it was a moment that you just want to live in forever. And I'm so grateful that I had that, and I wouldn't have had that at a Brooklyn Black party. You know what I mean? We're not running into Cicely Tyson like on a random block in Brooklyn. So I will say, for that reason, like, that was probably the single best party that I've been to because of her, because of that moment.
Not because of Vanity Fair.
Not necessarily. I was stressed. Like, it's a stressful kind of event.
That whole carpet seems stressful.
The carpet's the most stressful thing I've ever done. Like, you're sort of just like, everyone's nervous. Everyone has like nervous energy. Like, the music wasn't really hitting. No one was dancing. I'm like, if I'm going to a party, I'm going to dance, period. Like, it needs to feel like a house party. It needs to have a Soul Train line, or it's not really a party. You know what I mean? So this really actually doesn't answer your question. That was like the best conversation I ever had. But party, nah, Brooklyn
Okay,
Brooklyn
deal.
Block party, yeah.
Thank you.
This is great. I need this.
I have one for you.
You do?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna pull this out. I actually have, I think, the best house parties. BT does, yeah, and I'm gonna pull this out at the next one.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for reading this and reading all the things.
Come on. Okay, wait. You have to sign it for me.
Okay.
We have a pretty smart library.
Okay.